Hi, Mark, and welcome to the weekly Outside Views report on British politics. The British House of Commons has voted in favour of an agreement between the UK and the EU in the Brexit dispute over Northern Ireland. MPs voted on Wednesday with a clear majority in favour of a mechanism that gives the Northern Irish Regional Parliament a say in the application of new EU rules in the British region of that country. The Windsor Framework, sealed by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen at the end of February, is intended to settle the years-long dispute over the Brexit rules for Northern Ireland. The fact that Sunak was able to prevail against opposition from his own Conservative Party and the Northern Irish Unionist Party DUP is considered an important success. His party friends and ex-heads of government Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, among others, had positioned themselves clearly against him. The existing agreement, the so-called Northern Ireland Protocol, had caused a controversy because it created a customs border between Great Britain and the north in the Irish Sea. This was intended to prevent checks between British Northern Ireland and EU member Ireland and a resurgence of old conflicts in the former Civil War region. But the regulation also brought difficulties, for example, when sending parcels, medicines, and taking pets with you. And some unionists felt cut off from Britain. London has accused the Kremlin of spreading misinformation in connection with Russian allegations about the planned delivery of ammunition containing uranium to Ukraine. The British Army has been using depleted uranium in its armor-piercing shells for decades, said a spokesman for the British Ministry of Defence in a statement on Wednesday. This is a standard component and has nothing to do with nuclear weapons or capabilities. Russia knows this, but is deliberately trying to spread disinformation, the spokesman also said. Moscow had previously expressed its anger at London's plan to supply Ukraine with more powerful depleted uranium ammunition. Russian President Vladimir Putin claimed that these were weapons with a nuclear component. I would like to note that if all of this happens, Russia will be forced to respond accordingly, Putin said on Tuesday after meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping in Moscow. And Russia's defense minister Sergei Shoigu also threatened, of course Russia has an answer ready. The fallout from Russia's war on Ukraine and higher global demand has more than doubled the cost of British energy imports in 2022. Overall, the United Kingdom paid £117 billion, or around £4,200 per household, for oil, gas, electricity, and other energy sources from abroad, said the Association Offshore Energies UK on Wednesday. Of that, £63 billion was due for crude oil, petrol, diesel and other oil-based fuels, and £49 billion for gas. In 2021, the UK was still paying a total of £54 billion for energy from abroad overall. The UK has been a net importer of energy since 2004. The dependency on other countries threatens the supply. Energy costs in the UK, like almost everywhere else in the world, but more, have skyrocketed since the start of the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine. Regulator Ofgem has more than doubled the maximum unit price that utilities are allowed to charge for gas and electricity in a short space of time. For months, the government has been supporting customers with state aid. Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair has advocated taking the wind out of the sails of populists by sometimes contesting the issues with them. Populism takes advantage of resentment, but it doesn't invent it, said the Labour politician in an interview with the German press agency and the European news agencies AFP, ANSA and EFE. Asked how worried he was about ex-President Donald Trump returning to the White House, he said he was less interested in what populists were doing than what progressive center-left politicians were opposing them. This applies, for example, to the issue of migration. Blair explained that politicians who stood for election in Europe should have a clear position by now. It's not because people are racist. A small number may be, but others are just worried about not having control over the borders, Blair said, adding, "You have to give them a sense of security. It's the same with fighting crime. It's always the poorest groups that suffer from crime. Wealthy people can buy their freedom from everything," he said. Blair went on to say that the sensible side of resentment has to be dealt with in order to end the populists. "That's why we won elections," he said, who was his country's prime minister from 1997 to 2007. Peter Murrell, husband of outgoing Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, has resigned from a key party position in the Scottish National Party SNP. The PA news agency reported that the resignation as chief executive was effective immediately. Murrell was reportedly facing a no-confidence vote. Early on Friday, SNP media chief Murray Foot resigned after a dispute over the party's membership. The SNP did not want to give the number to the media. "Responsibility for responding to media inquiries rests with him," Murrell said, according to the PA. He actually only wanted to resign after the ongoing vote on the successor to his wife Nicola Sturgeon, but now took the step forward, according to Murrell. This allows the party to focus fully on Scotland's future. There had also been criticism because, as Secretary General, he was supposed to monitor the upcoming election of the regional head of government. One of the candidates for the office had accused him of a conflict of interest in his marriage to Sturgeon. After an unprecedented wave of strikes in the British Health Service NHS, the government has reached an agreement with the unions in the wage dispute. The government announced in London last Thursday that more than 1 million employees in England would receive a significant wage increase. The agreement provides for a one-off payment of at least £1,250 for the current tariff year and an increase of at least 5% from April. The largest unions advised their members to accept the deal, and planned strikes were suspended. As recently as Wednesday, tens of thousands of public sector employees, including many medical assistants, demonstrated last week in London for higher wages. Hundreds of thousands walked out across the country. Health Secretary Steve Barclay last week's Thursday called on residents to join other professionals in agreeing to the offer. The Conservative government had long refused to negotiate more money for NHS workers, claiming it would only fuel high inflation. Now, they spoke of a fair solution. "It is right that we are rewarding our hard-working NHS workers who have shown courage and dedication during the pandemic." That's what Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said, and the agreement would be affordable for taxpayers. Shortly before Christmas, the nurses union RCN called on its members to go on strike for the first time in its history, and rescue workers also went on strike. Labor disputes in various sectors have repeatedly paralyzed the country for months. For example, there is still no solution for all groups of employees and for all companies at the railways. Because of the acute shortage of skilled workers in various sectors, the British government wants to let more foreign construction workers, roofers and craftsmen into the country. That's according to a budget presented by Chancellor of the Exchequer Jeremy Hunt last week. This provides for the list of shortage occupations for which simplified visa requirements apply to be expanded by five craft occupations. The measure stands in stark contrast to the Conservative government's otherwise restrictive migration policy. Hunt promised not to solve the problem of the millions of job vacancies in the UK through, as he puts it, unlimited migration. In his lengthy speech on the budget last week, there was no mention of the additional visa facilitation. A BBC presenter last week's Thursday described it as a hidden story of the budget. Asked whether Brexit supporters might feel cheated by this, Hunt justified himself. Those who voted for Brexit said they want to control migration, not to stop it completely. The list of shortage occupations is to be revised again this autumn. A number of sectors are demanding an expansion of the professional groups in order to be able to recruit foreign skilled workers. And this concludes this week's video on British politics. You see the next one on a totally different topic right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.